Russian President Vladimir Putin calls on the West to halt its supply of weapons to Kyiv, even as Moscow continues shelling Ukrainian cities. The mayor of Mariupol says over 200 civilians are trapped underground in the besieged port city. Two controversial bills to strip prosecutors of investigative powers are pushed through Parliament by ruling party lawmakers and signed into law by President Moon Jae-in, causing uproar among the opposition. Grilling continues for President-elect Yoon Suk-yeol's nominees for government ministers in a series of confirmation hearings a week before Inauguration Day.
Hello and welcome to New Day at Arirang. It's Wednesday, May 4th, 8 a.m. here in Seoul, South Korea. I'm Lee Seung-jae.
I'm Oh Soo-young. Thanks as always for joining us this morning, because over the next hour we'll be giving you all the major headlines of the day and experts' insights on some of the key issues facing Korea and the rest of the world. Russian President Vladimir Putin spoke with his French counterpart on Tuesday, where he urged the West to halt its supply of weapons to Kyiv.
That's right. He also stressed that Moscow still remains open to dialogue. For this, Kim Yo-sun has more.
In a phone call with French President Emmanuel Macron on Tuesday local time, Russian President Vladimir Putin appealed to the West to stop supplying weapons to Ukraine. According to the Kremlin, Putin also urged the West to put pressure on Ukraine to halt the ongoing atrocities. The Russian leader told his French counterpart that Moscow is still open to dialogue. Macron, for his part, according to the Kremlin, explained that global food security was under threat due to the Ukraine war. He also called on the Russian leader to allow evacuations from the Azovstal steel plant in the city of Mariupol to resume. Macron is one of the few Western leaders to speak to Putin since Russia's invasion of Ukraine in February. Against his backdrop, Russia began a renewed attack on the Mariupol steel plant shortly after the first group of civilians was evacuated from the facility. Russia explained it was using artillery and aircraft to target firing positions taken by Ukrainian troops. This comes as the mayor of Mariupol estimated over 200 civilians remain trapped underground, with about 100,000 civilians in the city. The Ukrainian military high command said Russia is calling in troops based in its far east to join the battle. According to the Center for Defense Strategies, a Ukrainian think tank, the Kremlin was concentrating its recruitment on the Far East and Siberia to sustain the war in Ukraine. Kim Yo-sun, Arirang News.
President Moon Jae-in signed off two laws that will reshape the country's criminal justice system. The changes will take effect after a grace period of 4 months, but disputes are likely to continue between the two major political parties. Lee Kyung-eun explains further.
President Moon Jae-in, during his last cabinet meeting before leaving office, formally declared two controversial laws aimed at removing the prosecution's power to investigate, despite a petition from the People Power Party and the prosecution.
이와 같은 노력과 성과에도 불구하고 검찰 수사의 정치적 중립성과 공정성, 선택적 정의에 대한 우려가 여전히 해소되지 않았고 국민의 신뢰를 얻기에 충분하지 않다는 평가가 있었습니다. 국회가 수사와 기소의 분리에 한 걸음 더 나아간 이유라고 생각합니다.
The official signing came on the same day as the second and final bill was passed, which removes the prosecution's ability to use evidence in one case to get testimony in another. Despite a boycott by the PPP, the ruling Democratic Party, which holds a majority in parliament, swiftly pushed the bill through. The other bill, which dramatically reduces the types of crimes the prosecution can investigate, was passed on Saturday, also led by the DP. The People Power Party had tried to block both bills by filibustering, but debate was stopped because the DP had passed motions in advance to ensure the sessions ended. Following the passage, the DP, which has been pushing for prosecution reform for years, said it was a historic day, and it vowed to start the process of setting up a special investigative body which will take over the prosecution's power to investigate. The PPP, which opposes the idea and the whole passage itself, condemned it as an unlawful legislative dictatorship by the DP. Now, the PPP will seek ways to block the law from actually taking effect during a 4-month grace period. It filed for an injunction at the Constitutional Court, which has begun reviewing the case. The prosecution service expressed deep regret over the promulgation, saying the law itself and the passage procedure were unconstitutional, and they will take all possible responses, including taking the case to the Constitutional Court. 이경은, Arirang News.
The incoming Yoon administration unveiled a long list of policy goals. These include full compensation for small businesses hit by the pandemic and a roadmap for economic growth. Now, one thing that caught attention was that it didn't mention adding more US THAAD missile defense systems in the country. Yoon Jung-min tells us more.
The Presidential Transition Committee has unveiled the incoming Yoon Suk-yeol government's policy goals, which include 6 policy directions and 110 specific tasks under a vision of taking another leap forward, prospering together. Chairman An Chul-soo said Tuesday that the new government will put individuals first rather than the nation and emphasize the national interest, practical policies, fairness, and common sense.
In the current zeitgeist, governments are focusing on individual happiness and enabling people to live well together, rather than a collective way of thinking that prioritizes the country as a whole.
Broader goals focus on fairness, reviving the economy, strengthening welfare, nurturing science and technology, contributing to peace and inter-Korean relations, and expanding local autonomy. The incoming government has pledged full compensation for small business owners hit by the COVID-19 pandemic. It also plans to scrap the current government's policy of phasing out nuclear power and plans to reform both the justice system and the national pension system. On housing policy, it aims to provide some 2.5 million more homes to stabilize the market. The Transition Committee emphasized economic growth led by the private sector and supported by the government, aiming for deregulation and financial and tax incentives. The new government also plans to provide more support for new technologies, including semiconductors, AI, and batteries, to increase the amount of semiconductor exports by more than 30% until 2027. It aims for the denuclearization of North Korea and normalizing inter-Korean relations while using AI technology to reinforce South Korea's military power. The initiative unveiled on Tuesday did not include deploying additional units of the U.S. anti-missile system THAAD.
We continue to take a reserved stance on this. You can look at it that way. At this point, even the existing THAAD system is not working properly.
Other tasks include reinforcing social welfare, nurturing K-culture, and narrowing the gap between the capital and other regions for balanced growth. The committee said its policy goals overall will require additional budget spending worth some $165 billion over the span of 5 years. Since the presidential election in March, the Transition Committee has been working with experts in a range of fields to establish the Yoon administration's policy goals. The new government takes office next week. Yoon Jung-min, Arirang News.
Now, as seen from the Transition Committee's goals, restoring fairness has been emphasized in Korean society. Well, that goes for the confirmation process for Yoon's cabinet nominees. Now, during this last week leading up to the inauguration, Yoon's cabinet picks have been going through hearings. An official tapped for Education Minister stepped down over claims of abusing power on Tuesday. And other nominees are questioned not only on their expertise, but also on their ethics. Kim Do-yeon has the wrap-up for Tuesday's hearings.
President-elect Yoon Suk-yeol's nominee for Education Minister, Kim In-chul, withdrew from the running on Tuesday over allegations that he abused his power in a previous role to help his children get scholarships. He is the first of Yoon's ministerial nominations to fall through.
I wanted to take this last chance to give back to the country and to society, but I wasn't up to the task. I won't be giving any explanations or excuses. I accept all the blame. I want to apologize to the president-elect who trusted me with an important role.
Specifically, he's accused of abusing his position when he was an executive at the Korea Fulbright Foundation, around the time his own children received Fulbright scholarships. Calls for Kim to step down even came from the president-elect's party. because his alleged behavior is completely at odds with a core value in South Korean society today: fairness. In fact, at the National Assembly on Tuesday, that was a word spoken by lawmakers multiple times in different rooms, where hearings are underway for a number of other nominees. They turned up the heat in particular on Health Minister nominee Chung Ho-young, who has been denying accusations that he helped his children get into med school at Gyeongbuk National University when Chung was president of the affiliated university hospital. He's been asked several times whether he intends to withdraw his nomination, but each time has said no.
This is because despite the accusations, I don't believe I have any ethical issues.
Another fierce debate was the second day of the hearing for Prime Minister nominee Han Duck-soo, a nomination that will need a majority vote from Parliament. Lawmakers with the Democratic Party of Korea, which is in opposition to the new administration but has a majority of the seats, continued questioning different aspects of his professional career, including his tenure at the country's largest law firm, and asking about alleged financial irregularities, which Han denied across the board. It's not clear when the vote on Han will happen, but the president-elect will want to make sure he has a PM when he takes office next Wednesday. In the meantime, the DP has pushed back the hearing for perhaps Yoon's most controversial pick, his nominee for Justice Minister, Han Dong-hoon, citing Han's failure to submit requested data. Kim Do-yeon, Arirang News.
The nation's daily COVID-19 tally has been on the decline compared to the peak of the Omicron wave, but authorities found the first case of a new subvariant. For now, this strain doesn't seem to be as severe as previous variants. Han Song-woo tells us more.
From nearly a 3-month low of around 20,000 just the previous day, South Korea's daily tally of COVID-19 infections shot up to more than 50,000 on Tuesday. But it also marks 13 days in a row that the figure's been below the 100,000 mark. And according to health authorities, the nation's weekly caseload's been declining for 6 weeks straight.
The fourth week of April saw a total of roughly 410,000 cases, an average of 58,215 a day. That's a 34% drop from the week before. The reproduction number, meanwhile, has been under 1 for 5 weeks in a row now at 0.74.
There's a different cause for concern, though. Korea has detected its first case of the Omicron subvariant dubbed BA.2.12.1. A woman in her 50s who arrived in South Korea on April 16th from the United States and was confirmed with COVID-19 the day after.
This new subvariant spreading fast across the U.S. and its detection rates believed to be faster than that of the BA.2 subvariant. But there's no proof yet that it's more severe.
Officials have also confirmed one additional case of the XE and XM mutations each, and epidemiological investigations are reportedly underway. This came as the country lowered the risk level of the virus in regions outside the capital area by 1 notch to moderate. Seoul and the surrounding area has remained the same at moderate since late last month. On Monday, excluding gatherings of over 50 people, the outdoor mask mandate was lifted after being in place for a year and a half. Han Sung-woo, Arirang News.
Now, Pfizer beat its Q1 earnings estimates on Tuesday, boosted by sales of its COVID-19 vaccine and antiviral drug Paxlovid. Now, the company posted net income of over $7.8 billion in the first quarter, up from over $4.8 billion a year ago. Sales of COVID-19 vaccines grew to $13.2 billion from $3.2 billion a year ago. Sales of its antiviral drug also rose to $1.5 billion. Now, in all, Pfizer's revenue rose 77% year on year. Now, U.S. President Joe Biden on Tuesday called the leak first draft of Supreme Court opinion, which would overturn Roe v. Wade, radical. He also urged the Congress to pass legislation codifying the 50-year-old landmark decision, saying a woman's right to choose is fundamental. He insisted that if the leaked document became the court's final decision, it would mean other decisions related to the notion of privacy could be questioned. The Supreme Court is expected to make the final decision as early as the end of June, the biggest decision for the majority conservative bench since the nomination of 3 justices by former President Donald Trump. And now it's time for On Point, where we connect to experts to delve deeper into some of the key issues facing Korea in the spotlight right now. Now, one of the key figures in the incoming Yoon administration have stressed that the new government's top priority is, of course, improving the livelihoods of South Koreans. Now, we're still, of course, unfortunately grappling with the impact of the pandemic and worsening levels of debt and income polarization. Now, the key is to pursue sustainable development across the nation by promoting equal opportunities and enhancing their capabilities to build a flourishing society.
But it's always easier said than done, of course, and the government is really going to have to hit the ground running to address the wide array of issues related to people's livelihoods, from regional industries and innovation, redistribution and welfare, and housing. For an in-depth look at this and for a preview of some policies that we could see from the incoming Yoon administration, we speak to a senior advisor to the Presidential Transition Committee on Balanced Regional Development, Professor Oh Moon-sung, who also teaches tax accounting at Hanyang Women's University. A very good morning to you, Professor. Thought we were going to connect with you on the video there, but you caught us on the phone. Well, first off, Professor Oh, what have been the key priorities for the Transition Committee with regard to balanced regional development?
Moving on, people is the focus of the Committee on Balanced Regional Development of the Presidential Transition Committee. Assigned an area is well developed can be seen by looking at how well the population is spread out on average. The metropolitan area accounts for 12% of the total land area, but the number of residents is over 50%. Distributing these populations on average across the country cannot be forced. This is possible only by expanding job market, advanced educational facilities, and other infrastructure in each region. The most important thing for the Special Committee on Balanced Regional Development is to create an environment to achieve spatial justice that disperses the national population on average.
So, Professor, I guess the big question now is you of course, being part of the Transition Committee. How are you aiming to achieve this balanced regional development?
The Special Committee for Balanced Regional Development provides the tax incentives to disperse the individual and cooperation with the spending power to non-metropolitan areas in order to disperse the population and provides the local educational institutions with the same high-quality educational environment as those of the metropolitan area so that students can come to local universities. We are trying to focus on creating a regional environment, but people want to live in by creating an environment for people to live in and by equipping other infrastructure to reduce the gap in real estate price.
And Professor, you mentioned taxes there, and of course they're a crucial means of supporting inclusive growth across the nation, especially in the form of redistribution. Now, what are some major reforms that we can expect this year under the new Yoon government?
The Special Committee on Balanced Regional Development intends to introduce a system called Opportunity and Development Zone Project, ODZ, across the country. For the purpose of balanced regional development, the ODZ is a system that is significantly different from the existing special zone system. If the existing special zone system was a top-down system led by the central government, the newly introduced ODZ system is a bottom-up system led by the local governments. If the existing special zone system was a equally distributed system by the central government, in ODZ, the government only presents data and the requirements to belong to ODZ, and the local governments use this data to apply for the desired industry in the area they want. And the central government provides common tax support and provide tax support to that industry. If the local government asks for the necessary regulations to be loosened. A comprehensive environment will be created in the ODZ region. They will loosen the regulations and provide support for educational institutions that can obtain the necessary manpower. Regarding the tax issue, for example, if a multi-dose owner, house owner or in the metropolitan area sells a house and accrues the 1 billion won in capital gain tax, if a multi-house owner goes to the ODZ and buys a house in the ODZ area, a large portion of the capital gains tax will be deferred, and after a certain period of time, it makes it a situation where it is reduced or exempted. In this way, although the tax law reform is desirable, if it is not implemented on the whole country due to the national sentiment, try it first in the ODZ region, and if it works well, the ODZ is going to be used as a test bed for that purpose.
Now, Professor, there's been so much interest in the real estate aspect as well. So naturally, there's going to be huge interest in how the next administration is going to be dealing with land and property taxes, of course, including myself as well. What's been the biggest problem over the past 5 years under the Moon administration? But at the same time, what's the direction for Yoon's taxes for land and property owners?
The Yoon's administration will use the market-hostile real estate tax policy implemented under the Moon's administration, because we know that it is very difficult to stabilize real estate price through real estate taxes. We will not impose an excessive amount of comprehensive and real estate tax in order to lower the real estate prices through the comprehensive real estate tax. We will take a policy of opening a way out so that the real estate for sale can come out to the market at a certain time for multi-house owners.
And Professor, there were actually some complaints about the Moon government's corporate tax policies, particularly among foreign businesses here in the country. And are there going to be any changes made to make business in Korea more attractive?
Unlike other countries, Korea's corporate income tax rate system has a 4-tier tax rate structure, and the top corporate income tax rate is higher than other average OECD countries. About 90% of OECD countries have a 1-tier tax rate structure. The reason for having such a structure is that corporation cannot be viewed as rich corporation or poor corporation, unlike individuals. As for Korea's corporate income tax rate structure, like most other OECD countries, it is reasonable for reform to a one-level tax rate structure, and the top tax rate should be lowered.
Certainly a lot of policies at hand for the incoming administration, but unfortunately this is all the time that we have. Professor, thank you very much for your insights. We're really looking forward to speaking to you again in the future.
Thank you very much.
Now, South Korea's foreign exchange reserves fell last month for the second month in a row on the back of a stronger dollar. Now, the Bank of Korea said on Wednesday that foreign exchange reserves, a barometer of financial stability, were at around $449 billion. That's down about $8.5 billion from March. Now, the central bank attributed the drop to the stronger dollar affecting non-dollar assets and because some assets were sold to stabilize the exchange rate. Now, around 90% of the country's foreign reserves are in the form of securities. Now, as of the end of March, South Korea's reserves were the 8th largest in the world. China had the most reserves, followed by Japan. Now, South Korea's second biggest car maker, Kia, says it has registered its 10 millionth sale in the U.S. since deliveries to buyers began in 1993. Now, Kia America explained that the milestone comes as the company experiences an increase in the sales of its electrified vehicles in spite of the challenges facing the industry as a whole. Now, saying that it has sold more than 59,000 units in April, the company added that it has achieved its best ever April sales total for EV models. Now, Kia's bigger affiliate Hyundai Motor reported its second best April retail sales month in its history in the U.S., reporting retail sales of nearly 62,000 units. Now this week, Jeju is hosting the 9th Annual International Electric Vehicle Expo. South Korea is, of course, one of the world's leading makers of EVs, but this event goes beyond cars, even to ships, drones, and other green energy solutions. Kim Young-sun takes us there.
Jeju Island is known for its harmony with nature. Here on Tuesday, innovators gathered to display some of their brightest ideas for a green, sustainable future.
For the 9th International Electric Vehicle Expo, electric vehicle families from 50 different countries have come to this carbon-free island of Jeju-do to put their heads together about the future and find solutions to climate change. This year, we have around 100 sections displaying ESG firms, electric ships, UAM, and autonomous cars.
From new and upgraded electric vehicles to compact and convenient chargers, this expo has it all.
It's been about 200 years since electric vehicles were invented, but there are a lot of reasons why they haven't been popularized. They don't go far, they're expensive. But here we are rewriting the 200-year-old history of electric vehicles.
Visitors can even get a chance to get behind the wheel, like testing out this South Korean electric car called Naive. This small electric car can serve as an excellent energy solution. It comes with a 600-liter trunk and can go up to 100 kilometers after one full charge. Small electric vehicles are typically not allowed to drive on highways or major roads. But this car could replace motorbikes to make short-distance deliveries. It's safer, it packs more, and most importantly, it's greener. One report from the National Institute of Environmental Research says that the carbon monoxide emitted by motorbikes make up about a third of traffic pollution. With this car running on roads instead, the carbon emissions from food deliveries can be cut down to zero. Another technology from a South Korea-based company caught visitors' attention.
We develop full-stack autonomous driving software. Our total autonomous driving distance is the world's 7th longest. And we're constantly improving by putting our technology to the test on roads, so we can put it out on the market soon.
Their self-driving vehicle uses light detection and ranging sensors to detect its surroundings. The company's technology also includes remote control. This might seem like a driving simulation, but it's actually driving a car in Hwasong, more than 500 kilometers away. Now they're looking to go one step further and turn their cars electric. The International Electric Vehicle Expo is open until this Friday. Kim Young-sun, Arirang News, Jeju Island.
Now it's time for Global Insights, where we speak to experts from around the world on issues making headlines. Now, allied leaders of the North Atlantic Treaty Organization will meet at a summit next month amid the ongoing Russian invasion of Ukraine. The Madrid summit will finalize the allied countries' next strategic concept, taking into account the organization's future ties with Moscow, as well as China's growing influence in Asia, according to NATO. In fact, the transatlantic allies have invited their Asia-Pacific partners, South Korea, Australia, Japan and New Zealand, to join in, as global challenges demand global solutions, as the NATO Secretary-General put it. We're going to discuss what we may see as different alliances come together amid this time of conflict and uncertainty. For this, we're joined by Elizabeth Braw, Senior Fellow of Foreign and Defence Policy at the American Enterprise Institute, and Professor Kim Won-soo, Rector of Global Academy for Future Civilizations at Kyung University in Seoul. Very warm welcome to you both. And to begin with you, Ms. Braw, now, world leaders at the NATO summit in June, they're going to try and finalise their strategic concept. And, well, what do you think this concept is going to entail?
So the strategic concept is essentially NATO's national security strategy. Every country has a national security strategy. NATO has its strategic concept, and it comes out about every 10 years rather. And the last one, in fact, came out more than 10 years ago, and a lot has changed. The annexation of Crimea was of course, 8 years ago, and NATO's neighborhood has changed radically even since then, now most recently and most importantly with the war in Ukraine. So all of this has to be taken into account in this new strategic concept and will be taken into the new strategic concept, which has to address a radically changed world compared to what it was in 2010. And that radically changed world, of course, includes China as well. China's increasingly aggressive posture. Now NATO's role is territorial defense. So what China does maybe matters less in this part of the world, in NATO's part of the world, but nevertheless, what China is doing will be on all these leaders' minds.
And Ms. Brunau, what's making headlines these days is Finland and Sweden joining the Washington Treaty. Now, it seems to be a matter of time rather than a matter of whether they will or not. But what would that actually mean for the Kremlin? I mean, what kind of losses would this mean for them?
It's a huge loss of face for Russia. There has been it's a long-standing tradition that both Sweden and Finland have maintained of remaining outside any military alliance. Of course, it has been, it's no secret to anybody that they cooperate very closely with NATO, but formally they are not part of NATO, and that has cultural background starting in World War II, when Sweden remain neutral, and then in the Cold War maintained that policy of neutrality. Finland was forced by the Soviet Union to remain neutral during the Cold War, but both countries, even since the end of the Cold War, have had this policy of remaining outside NATO. And now they look very likely to say that that time is over. Now we have to take a position, and we'll take the position of joining NATO. Is really a radical shift, not so much maybe in military terms, but in policy terms. And Russia will stand there embarrassed at having not just failed to invade Ukraine or to conquer Ukraine in the way he wanted, but also having lost these two non-aligned countries in the process, the way it looks like it's heading now.
And now, bringing you into the conversation, Professor Kim, South Korea, along with Japan, Australia and New Zealand, they've been mentioned as potential non-member participants in the summit, as the US has been striving to rally allies and partners to hold Russia accountable for its invasion of Ukraine. Do you think Seoul is going to choose to join the summit once Yoon takes office, and what kind of role do you see it playing?
Yes, as you said, it will be decided by the new government due to take office next week. And personally, and also they already indicated they are considering it. And personally, I would be more surprised if the new government decides not to go for two reasons. Because first, the South Korea has been working with NATO for partnership since 2006 as one of the NATO's global partners. Secondly, South Korea already participated in NATO's 40 ministers meeting virtually held last year. So I think it is more likely for South Korea, new government of South Korea to participate in the summit.
And Ms. Ward, what are your thoughts on this? What kind of role do you think these possibly invited countries such as South Korea would be playing at this summit? Do you think they'd be playing a significant role, or is it more symbolic and showing solidarity?
There's a lot of symbolism, but also potentially policy proposals, policy ideas that will be discussed. We should remember that Asia and the Indo-Pacific region are gaining prominence as far as NATO is concerned, as far as the US is concerned, clearly, and we saw that, for example, with AUKUS, the new alliance or a grouping involving the US, the UK, and Australia. We've seen it with the Quad, and the challenge is that NATO is an organization that's set up to counter the Soviet Union or the Warsaw Pact, and it's really the only remaining military alliance. And as a result, it has all these other challenges sort of dumped in its lap, and so it has to try to find some sort of way of handling China, even though China was not one of its original responsibilities. And for that, it will need to, and it's likely to form stronger partnerships with friends and allies in the region. So that's why the invitation to countries, including South Korea, to be part of this summit goes far beyond symbolism.
And Professor Kim, we seem to be seeing Washington's transatlantic and Indo-Pacific partners working together and jointly tackling Moscow and Beijing. Are we seeing them really merge together? I mean, what does this mean for the world order?
I think for now, it is a more for partnership for cooperation rather than a formal merging, because membership is one thing and partnership is another. But as we previously discussed, there are a lot of common challenges to be shared by NATO and also NATO's Asia-Pacific partners. And we share same values. And there are new challenges emerging, not only along the geographical geopolitical fault lines now being developed throughout the world, but also we are facing common challenges like cybersecurity and chemical, biological, radiological, and nuclear security risks, and also how to counter disinformation. So we have a new challenges and common agenda NATO and Asia-Pacific partners can discuss. But I think it is still too early how that partnership between NATO and Asia-Pacific partners will take shape. So I think it remains to be seen.
And Professor Kim, well, there's speculation that if President-elect, and who will of course be president by that time, Yoon, if he attends the NATO summit in June, then that might actually set the scene for his first in-person encounter with Japanese Prime Minister Fumio Kishida and possibly a trilateral meeting with President Biden as well. Do you see these sideline sort of run-ins happening?
Yes, I see that possibility coming. If President Yoon decides to go, which is likelier than not going, and then that setting will provide a perfect opportunity for having perhaps trilateral summit between Korea, US, and Japan, and also plus a bilateral summit between Korea and Japan, because the Korea-Japan relationship still remains the weakest link between in the relationship of the US in its Asian allies, Korea and Japan. So Korea-Japan relationship and also new president makes clear that it will be his priority to improve the relationship, and so that we can have a stronger base by rectifying the weaker link in the trilateral relationship in the Asia-Pacific, led by the US.
And Professor Kim, when they do have a three-way summit at some point, what do you think is going to be on the agenda?
Lots, the security challenges, of course, in the NATO summit context, but also bilateral issues between Korea and Japan. And I think it's long overdue to be rectified because, again, Korea and Japan share same values. And also, I think Korea and Japan share the same interest in keeping the peace and security, keeping the status quo in the Asia-Pacific. So I think Korea and Japan have many more reasons to improve their bilateral relationship sooner rather than later.
And Ms. Broad, now, how do you see the Kremlin reacting to the summit? I mean, they didn't stop shelling when the UN Secretary General visited Ukraine, for instance. Should Western allies brace themselves for an even bigger reaction?
There's no doubt that if Sweden and Finland submit membership applications on the 17th or 18th of May, as they are now extremely likely to do, then Russia, the Kremlin, will react somehow. It would be it would just be extremely unlikely that the Kremlin would say nothing, because this is a huge embarrassment really to Russia and a loss of two non-allied countries in Russia's immediate neighborhood. And it has been interesting to see just in the past couple of days, Russian authorities or a Russian organization has launched an advertisement campaign at Russian bus stops denouncing various famous Swedes, including the author of Pippi Longstocking and the founder of IKEA, denouncing them as Nazis. So you can see where this is going. Russia is trying to discredit Sweden. And why is it trying to discredit Sweden? Because it really, I think, doesn't have the military means to do anything about this NATO likely membership application to NATO. So it's trying to use disinformation and discreditation and other non-military means to weaken Sweden. But Finland and Sweden are prepared. Finland has already been subjected to Russian cyber attacks, increased Russian cyber attacks, since it started discussing NATO membership. So we'll see more of that. But as for a military response, Russia is threatening military response and has been threatening that for years. But of course, we know it's completely in over its head in Ukraine and won't have military forces to spend for any sort of aggression against Sweden or Finland or any other NATO member state.
And Ms. Broad, before we go, well, the summit's a month away and honestly, a lot can happen in a month. Do you see any room for diplomacy or any kind of breakthrough that could change the situation? My question to you, Ms. Broad.
Not very much. I'm not hopeful. We have seen even the diplomat most likely to have any sort of success. The UN Secretary General, as you mentioned, went to Kyiv, and when he was there, the Russians shelled Kyiv. So it's very hard to see how diplomacy can have any has much chance of success at the moment. But we should remember that President Erdogan of Turkey, who is often an annoying person, has really taken the lead in negotiating and having some sort of talks between Russia and Ukraine. And I think if anybody can succeed or at least launch some sort of process where they have serious talks, it is him. And NATO is lucky to have Turkey as a member state, even though Turkey is often annoying and Erdogan is often annoying personally. But he is a very useful ally in this situation, and has indeed been in other situations as well.
Well, I'm afraid this is all we have time for today. That was Elizabeth Broad, Senior Fellow of Foreign and Defence Policy at the American Enterprise Institute, and Professor Kim Won-soo, Rector of Global Academy for Future Civilizations at Kyung University. Thank you both so much for your insights today.
Thank you so much.
Now, on the rural front, training has been set up for local farmers interested in taking advantage of technology for their trade. For this, Yoon Jin explains.
This large greenhouse houses deliciously ripe strawberries. Considering its large area, there's only one farmer at work. And instead of the usual farming tools, it looks like the farmer is busy on their phone. With just a touch on a smartphone, the smart farm installations sense changes in the environment both inside and outside, then automatically opens or closes the windows. Supplying nutrition to the crops inside these smart farms can also be done automatically or remotely. These functions allow farmers to respond to sudden changes in weather easily and quickly, which increases efficiency and convenience. These smart farms have shown to be 30% more productive than traditional farms, and these farms produce higher proportions of better quality foods.
When there is sudden rain or strong wind or a rise in temperature, farmers get notifications on their phones so we can respond quickly, remotely.
Now there are training centers to make the smart farms and their benefits more widespread. There are more than 100 locations where farmers can learn about and experience the technology behind these smart farms. Around 1,250 farms nationwide have turned smart following the training, and their average income is reported to have increased by an average of 21%.
In order to run a successful smart farm, farmers need sufficient training and practice with the technology.
The farming and agriculture industry in South Korea has been experiencing a labor reduction due to an aging farming population, which makes the spread of this smart farm technology even more necessary. 이은진, 아리랑 뉴스.
Now, for a look at news from around the world, we now turn to our Matthew Ashley standing by at the Arirang newsroom. Good morning to you, Matthew.
Good morning to you guys.
Hi, Matthew. Let's start with some news from Europe, as both Greece and Italy have come forward with their plans to reduce their reliance on Russian gas.
Well, that's right. On Tuesday, Greece officially started construction on a new floating liquefied natural gas terminal to improve gas supply to southeastern Europe and reduce dependency on Russian gas supplies. Now, European leaders attended the ceremony at the construction site in the northeastern port city of Alexandroupolis. The new LNG terminal station will store 153,500 cubic meters of LNG and turn 5.5 billion cubic meters of LNG back into gas each year. Meanwhile, Italy has set a goal of becoming completely independent from Russian gas by 2024. In an interview on Tuesday, Italian cabinet minister Roberto Cingolani said that it's necessary and expressed an interest in diversifying gas imports from Algeria, Angola, Congo and Qatar. Now, these new measures come as the EU seeks to reduce its dependency on Russian gas following Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Now, turning over to Japan, as people across the country on Tuesday protested the government's plan to amend its pacifist constitution. The demonstrations took place on Japan's Constitution Memorial Day. A rally in Tokyo was attended by 15,000 people, and other protests were also held in Osaka, Hokkaido, and Hyogo Prefecture. Participants said that due to Japan's previous wars, the country shouldn't have an army. They also spoke out against the government's plan to increase military spending by around $38.4 billion. Meanwhile, a recent survey of 3,000 people by local Japanese outlet Yomiuri Shimbun found that 6 out of 10 respondents support the constitutional amendment. Inmates in overcrowded prisons in Bolivia are able to reduce their sentence by reading books. The initiative, which was first observed in Brazil, aims to expand literacy. Prisoners who take part in the Books Behind Bars program get the chance to be released from jail days or even weeks earlier. This comes as the country grapples with a slow judicial system that has left many in detention while awaiting trial. So far, the program has been launched in 47 prisons which don't have financial resources for education or social assistance. According to reports, 865 inmates are currently improving their reading and writing skills while moving closer to freedom. New York's Metropolitan Museum of Art hosted the annual Met Gala on Monday evening. Celebrated as a big night out for fashion, celebrities are known to wear their most striking outfits for the red carpet. Featuring big names from TV, film and politics, they dressed according to their interpretation of this year's gilded glamour and white tie dress code. This references the Gilded Age, an era during which America transformed at the end of the 19th century through rapid economic growth. Also in attendance was Korean actress Jong Ho-yeon with fashion magazine Vogue exploring her look, which was reportedly inspired by late 1800s oil paintings. A new exhibition has been drawing in fans of the legendary martial arts master Bruce Lee. Starting on April 24th in San Francisco's Chinatown, the exhibit titled We Are Bruce Lee explores many aspects of the martial artist's life. In particular, it looks at Lee's popularity across socio-economic classes in the US, as he was particularly popular in underrepresented minority communities. The exhibition has interactive displays that get visitors involved and thinking about how Lee lived his life. One avid collector even loaned roughly 300 artifacts to the exhibition, including a document that showed Lee was paid less than actors in minor roles and the stuntmen.
Good morning. Well, the nation is having some of the most beautiful spring days, and today will be another great one. We started off crisp and chilly on Wednesday morning, but temperatures will warm up fast by the afternoon, with highs going into the mid-20s under sunny skies. Meanwhile, dry weather and wind advisories have been issued in the east of Gangwon-do and Gyeongsang-Pukto provinces, and continuous warm and dry winds will bring very high fire danger to the areas. Morning fog in the south has burnt off after sunup, and a single-figure start for some inland regions this morning. That's including over in Gyeongju, starting out at 7 degrees. Highs will be 3 to 5 degrees higher than yesterday, so Seoul will be going up to 25 degrees Celsius, Daegu topping out at 27 degrees, with decent air quality and high to very high UV rays today. Well, this year's Children's Day marks its 100th anniversary, so various events are taking place around the country. And thankfully, the weather will be on our side. With that, here's a look at the weather conditions around the globe.
And that's going to wrap up our newscast for this morning, but stick around for more updates throughout the day.
Thanks for joining us this morning. Have a great rest of your day wherever you are. Goodbye.